Hello everyone, it's Unit 13 here on Scene at the Homestead. This must be the third or fourth time I've tried to start this video and the phone keeps ringing. It's driving me insane. Alright, let's get started. What you're looking at is a fighting load carrier or an FLC. Sorry about the handheld work. It's the only way I can get all of this in the screen. I want to put it on a tripod soon enough. What I'm going to do with this is, I'll see if I can get in here close where you can actually see it. I'm going to strip this down for parts. I want the edge binding. I want the buckles. I'm going to keep this webbing for other different purposes. I'll take this handle and separate it here, this pull handle. I can add that to something else that may need it. And then ultimately what I want to do is take this section of the fighting load carrier and cut it up into pieces that will fit as a filler to go on this not fighting load carrier, but let's see if I can move this over here with me so now I have enough cord. This is a DF-LCS Air Force style load bearing equipment, and the way that this is set up is there's really a gap where there's no gear can go on here. What I'm going to do is take this material here and rework it so that it will fit in here and act as a spacer that is PALS equipped. That way I can attach pouches here and I don't have any loss of space. Probably what I'll do is demonstrate later how that will fit over top of this, so this elastic will still have retain its elasticity and still be functional, but the way I'll hook these up are with some paracord in here so that there's some flex with it in case I need to adjust this if I'm wearing a winter coat versus if I'm not wearing a coat in the summer. Okay, I think I said enough about that. Let's get started. The first thing I need to do is get this thing taken apart so it's easy for me to deal with, or easier to handle. This is a well-worn piece of kit here. A lot of repairs on it. Okay, now that I've got it apart, what I want to do is, maybe I can bring that in closer to the camera. There's a seam here. I want to get this apart. I want to be able to get this piece of web out, so I'll remove this stitching here, so this will open up fully. And then I'm also going to remove the this edge banding here so I can get this mesh off, because I want to reuse all of these pieces of edge banding or binder. And then by doing that, by opening this up and then just sewing this back down here along this edge, this will open this up fully to work over top of that elastic section that's on that LCS. I'll also remove this tab here. I'll get it so that all of this meshes off of here. Break out the old faithful seam ripper. I don't want to damage this section in any way, and then the back side, or I don't know if I can show this side here, I don't want to get the seam ripper to tear it up. So I'm going to be very careful, be very patient. Just work these stitches a little bit at a time. I'm not going to film this entire process. I'm just going to get started here and then remove the camera out of the way so I can work quicker. I just want everyone to be able to see how this process starts out, and then I probably will, that stitch goes all the way down here, come back at different stages and then film a little bit more of that. Okay, I'm starting to go into the main material there, and I don't want to do that. I don't want any rips or tears in it. With this kind of step here, it's better to go slow, take your time. That way you don't end up with this in your fingers or up under your fingernail. It's one of the worst things you'll ever have happen to you, I can tell you. It's pretty gnarly. Okay, I got the tab off here, this adjustment tab. And I've started on this section here so I can get this piece of web out. What I realized and had forgotten, it's been a while since I did this. This is in place here. Make sure that's on the camera. It's easier to take this stitch out here, this bar tack, and this one here holding the web in, as well as what's holding it in the corner. Then being able to open this up, it makes it a lot easier to get to this when it's in place. Otherwise, it's difficult to reach in here. So oftentimes, it's very difficult to get it started, because it's a very tight stitch. They have the tension on that machine set very tight. Plus the thickness of material here. You can see it's hard to find that stitch in there. But I have to get to at least one part of it to start it. So here we go. Looks like I can see something here. There's a little bit of stitching right there. Let's see if I can get this into there. Make sure I'm not ripping something I don't want ripped. Sometimes that's not enough. That initial stitch isn't quite enough to get it going. It's a little bit of a fight sometimes. Open that up more. Get this lower half of that zigzag. Just go very slow. Try not to use a bunch of force. Okay, I got the first or the end stitch of this top stitch here. So I'm going to start working that as well, so it'll make it a little bit easier to pull this apart. This is a slow, tedious process, or well worth taking your time to do. Okay, that piece of web has been removed. To remove this edge binding, I just come across the top here to remove it and start skipping stitches. Okay, almost there. So we've got that section off. I'm going to come back over here and do the same thing to this section here so I can get it released. With this section here, I'm going to take this all the way down to the end of that, where that mesh is. I'm showing a lot of disassembly in this video because the sewing part, once I get it apart, to sew it back together, there really won't be much to that. It'll take just a moment. This is probably equally important, I think, to show people how to take this stuff apart. This feels like this might have been sewn down on here. All right. If I can get in here under this. This is probably the most boring part, but it's also, I don't know, for people who've never seen how this stuff is put together, or maybe reluctant to try to do this. I want you to see how easy it is. I'm about to show you how easy it is. I poke my finger if I'm not careful. Okay. Okay. Come in and cut that. Okay, I'm back. I've removed and salvaged all the edge binding that I'm going to reuse. I took the edge binding off this piece of mesh that was there. I've cleaned up all of the threads on this piece here and gotten it completely apart. So now it's going to be easier to sew this edge binding all the way around here the way I want it. What I'm going to do before I sew that edge binding on is cut these sections to size here. What I want to do, let me get a pencil here. I want to salvage the full width of this. If I cut to here and try to put the edge binding on, I'm going to lose some of this space here, and I want the full width of that space. So what I'll do is, I'm going to have to go get a ruler. I forgot to bring one. Okay, let's get started. I had to get a ruler. Put the edge binding on here as it is going to go on, fold it over. Looks like if I go from this stitch here to here is going to be a 1/2 inch out here. Okay, I got those sections marked. Now I want to cut it. Make sure this is nice and flat. It's nice and even all the way around. This might overlap here a little bit. Let's press this down flat. Yeah, I think I could probably trim the edge just a little bit there. The back section doesn't have to line up perfectly with this because it's going to be hidden, and it's just a loop over the belt or that elastic section. What does matter is this top part needs to be the same width. The next step is going to be to come back and sew the edge binding down on these edges here, both sides. Then the next step after that will be to sew this edge here on. Okay, let's get started with the sewing part. I'm going to put this binding on. To start the binding, I'm going to start the binding off the edge. Then when I come back to sew this top part here, I will fold this over and bind it within this stitch line. If I don't, it'll be difficult to start this. So, go in here. Oh, something's grabbing it. Webbing's grabbing down there. I want to make sure that the edge of the material is all the way to the edge of the all the way into the fold of the webbing there. Just going to take it slow. Also trying to follow along the old stitch line that's on there. Come around here, flip it over, inspect this, make sure that I went all the way across and caught that webbing in there, and it's easy to see here why I moved that over to the other side of the bar tack, because this is just coming into contact with it there. So this is going to give us a nice stitch line. Take it nice and slow. Get a nice clean stitch line doing that. Everything will stay in line. Lined up. Just last couple stitches by hand. Now I can take and fold these edges under. Looks like I'm a little short on this side, so I'm going to do something I don't usually like to do, but actually I'm going to leave it that length. I'm just going to heat it up. Probably not going to be able to do that down here. It's just enough. Trim it a little bit. Make a good clean edge. Alright, I'm going to stitch these edges together. I'm going to start off here like this. Okay. See how this foot's starting to go up under the binding and push it? Get that foot up there. I'm going to go ahead and do a few more stitches by hand. Hold on to these. I'm going to make sure I get over this stitch line here because I didn't back tack it. So I want to make sure that that stitch there catches. Those threads in there. Fold this under. Looks like I've got some fraying. Clean that up. Get those top edges lined up. Make sure both pieces of this fabric are pulled nice and tight. They're lined up. Do those by hand. Overlapping that stitch again. Make sure I get a good capture of that stitch so it won't unravel. And I'm going to go ahead and stitch this twice. Well, looks like I've got some fraying. Something's going on here. Okay, prefer not to have those burnt edges there, but it is what it is. We've got double stitch line. This has gone over itself twice, So we capture this thread here, so because this is gonna eventually pull back, try to pull out, but that should prevent it. Okay, now that this has been sewn together, it's ready to install on this DF-LCS. The first step in that is to free up that section of elastic. That's some good hook and loop. It's got some great holding power. See if I can get that in frame. So what was once the top is now the bottom. Simply put it over top of that elastic section there. Sometimes there's enough space in here. Let's get that to overlap. I'm not going to spend much time on it. I'd rather just show you what's going on here. I'm going to pull this back a little bit. And I'm going to leave not this much of the hook and loop section out. Okay. Got a buckle or something in my way. There we go. Okay, that's what the back side looks like. I'll flip this around. So we can lace up this front side. Take a length of paracord here. Okay, take this down, even it up across there, like that. Time to feed this through. Pull that a little bit snug. Then I want to pull approximately about 1/4 inch of space between these two panels. There it is. Gather this loose end up down here. My ends don't match, so I'm going to pull on this to even it out a little bit. Okay, that's better. Let's pull the tension out of, or pull the space, that gap in there again. Pretty satisfied with that. Just leave that hang for a moment. Do the same thing here. Okay. I think it's better if I get this first section pulled. Whoops. Gotta cross it. Okay, a little bit more down here on the ends. Now I've got my ends even. Whoops. But a little bit more. There we go. Now, feed this through one more time. Looks a lot better like that. Okay, I'm still even at the bottom. I'm going to pull my gap in here. About 1/4 inch or so. Not much more. Another overhand. Not right up to the bottom there. It's again. So it's got a quarter inch. That's a good half inch of stretch, which is about the maximum that elastic will stretch there. I'm not sure if it was in the video or not. Next step. Is grab these ends here. Feed them in here. Once items get inside there, or not get inside there, once items get attached to this, the tension from the items on the pouches on there, or whatever it's on there, magazine pouches or anything, it'll hold that in place. If it doesn't, it can always be re-threaded up through here and back over. So far I've had pretty good luck like that. However, you know, mileage may vary, as they say. Okay, so there it is. There is the modified LCS panel to fill in that gap where there's actually no PALS attachments on this LCS, where there is now LCS or PALS attachment to the LCS in this space. If you're wearing, if you have a bigger gap in between there, then have 3 of these in if you have enough space there. But I think they're all pretty much the same, made the same way, if I'm not mistaken. I haven't dealt with anything larger than this size here, which is a small medium. So I'm not sure how big of a gap this is going to be on a different setup. Goodness, I don't know if there's anything else I can think of to tell you about this. It's pretty straightforward little modification. Yeah, if I forget anything, of course I will put it in my blog. This is Unit 13. I'm out.
746 B Bravo assault with injuries. Rescue 46. Respond to Northwest 13th Street, Northwest 4th Avenue, Northwest 13th Street, Northwest 4th Avenue. Call advised that her boyfriend kicked her out of the car. She's bleeding from her arm and face. Male was in a blue Dodge. 5-minute time delay. Subject has left the scene.